Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to talk about correctives and finding the appropriate balance within your training program. Now, corrective training is something which for me is very much like a lot of things in strength conditioning where the pendulum swings so far one way then the other. For example, when in my first year as a strength conditioning coach or as an intern, I was taught the NASM model, which is basically you do your assessment, and once you find a faulty movement pattern, that it's going to be the result of tight and or weak muscles, and that, for example, you need to first inhibit a muscle, so basically release it with stuff like foam rolling. Then you need to lengthen it with static stretching. Then you need to activate the underactive muscles, and then you need to integrate it into a whole movement pattern. Now, positives of this, you're kind of attacking it with all angles, and you're kind of throwing, I suppose, the kitchen sink at it, if you will. Negatives, time consuming. And my thought process started there. Then it went to, for example, just doing the actual movement better. So let's coach it first. I remember working for a tennis club once, and the chap who was the head of the tennis club insisted that we screen all our athletes, which again is good practice. But then immediately after, I remember showing him a video of an 8-year-old girl's overhead squat, and he was like, weak glutes. I was like, I mean, she's 8 years old. This is probably the first time she's done a structured squat in her life. Maybe we could coach it better. Maybe we could drip feed in squat-based play, and over time her body would work out the most effective way to coordinate that movement pattern. Now I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. So for example, if you've seen the picture of my overhead squat a couple of weeks ago, it's very easy to be so far one end, as I've been potentially guilty of, let's just train the movement pattern but better. Now this works providing that you're not under so much physical stress, i.e. the weight's too heavy, you're getting fatigued near the end of the set, and that you have something to keep you accountable. So for me, what I'm trying to do now is find the middle ground between the two. So I'll give you an example of that. Rather than overhaul a program and be like, right, well, we're not bench pressing, we're not doing any overhead work at all until the shoulders, quote unquote, fix themselves. Can we refine the lifts we're already doing? So as an example, with my chin-ups, rather than doing chin-ups, I'm now performing something I've stolen from the School of Calisthenics, where basically you start in a dead hang. So you're going to have your arms near your shoulders. You're going to then retract and depress down, so you're active. Then you'll do a chin-up, sink back into your dead, active, chin-up. And just by this subtle little tweak, the scapula, or the muscles around the scapula, the rhomboids, etc., which are easily neglected if our technique isn't on point. Now they're getting an extra bit of work. I've not stripped it right back down to its lowest level, and I'm still getting the pulling strength from a pull-up. Another thing to think of is keeping the same volume. So for example, something like a cluster set, whereby rather than doing, say, a set of 12, you might do a set of 6 quality reps, rest for 15 to 30 seconds or longer if you need it, and then performing another 6 reps. So you're keeping the same volume. You're still going to get a very similar stimulus for strength, similar stimulus for hypertrophy, without necessarily having your movement patterns crumble, or you're defaulting to using the quote-unquote wrong muscles during a movement pattern. Another thing to think of is, can you have constraints in that movement pattern that force you to address your weak link? So for example, barbell windmills, which look a little bit like a circus trick, but the idea is with those, you're going to be at T-spine mobility. If that you really have to stabilize when you've got one hand on a barbell, wouldn't recommend doing this if you've not had experience with your shoulders in an overhead position, but you're still getting a training effect from your corrective work. So as I said, be careful of anyone who has a black or white opinion on anything, including me. Can you refine the movement? Maybe you're tweaking volume or intensity to see if you can keep the movement pattern looking as it should. Maybe you add a subtle difference to it. So for example, with the chin-ups, going dead hang, active hang, chin up. Maybe you can accumulate the same volume with cluster sets, and this way it avoids us either A, being a meathead who refuses to address their movement issues until, of course, you injure yourself and it's too late, or B, being the guy who spends 45 minutes foam rolling and doing correctives but actually doesn't improve their athletic performance or move closer towards their goal. Let's find the middle ground, and let's refine something, or try and refine an exercise before we think about removing it. Let's tweak volume and intensity before we worry about not training or getting so obsessed with everything being perfect that we have paralysis by analysis. Hope you found this useful. Catch you in the next video.